Hey guys, how you doing? So I know I'm a little bit late, but my day job is absolutely taking up all of my time. And being with the family and making sure that all the holiday stuff is getting together, it's been very challenging to get down here to be able to do one of these videos. But I wanted to go through one of the parts that I think is obviously the major component of this whole build, and that's the engine block. And I wanted to show you one of the things that I'm going to be improving so that it is more robust to be able to handle the horsepower that we're going to be making, so we can get this car down the track hopefully in record time. So stay tuned and I'll show you what we're talking about. Let's go over the engine block and specifically the mains that I wanted to make some improvements on. So I'm going to take you out to the garage where I've got the parts. This is the engine block for the Bergenholtz Mazda 6. This is the MZR 2.3 liter engine. So this is the engine that we were making close to 1400 horsepower back in 2006. Now, every engine that we got from Mazda was a warranty return, which wasn't any problem because what was worn out on the engines really didn't have any effect for what we were using them for. The block and the cylinder head castings were all just fine. So back then I would replace the liners with the liners that you see here, and I would fill the cooling passages with this hard block material, which is pretty archaic, but I tell you what, I tried lots of different things back then and went through lots of iterations, from liners that encompassed this whole area and actually included some extra head studs, all the way to trying to basically make an iron block sit inside of an aluminum housing. But I tell you, the very best structure that we had was what you see sitting in front of you. Pretty basic, stock casting, Golden Eagle sleeves with some hard block. Kept a pretty round bore and was able to handle the abuse that we put it through. So nothing really fancy, but one thing I did always have a problem with was the main girdle. Well, the main girdle isn't really all too shabby, but trying to make 1400 horsepower is a tall order for any four-cylinder. So as you guys know, one of the biggest problems with mains is when you get some main float. A main float is where the main actually separates from the block and you start to move away. You lose your bearing clearances, you lose oil pressure, and then all hell breaks loose. So it's really not a great thing to happen. When we first started this project, I think the easy button was to go ahead and call ARP and see what kind of studs they had on the shelf. We tried a few different styles. Nothing really worked. We had some major float. So I decided to go with a larger stud. And the problem is there's just not enough parent material here to increase the size of the stud. So when we did that, we ran into other problems. Basically what I like to say are unintended consequences. So what we decided to do was just go back to the stock main fastener size, which is a 10 millimeter. So basically what you're seeing here is exactly what we used when we were making 1400 horsepower. This whole main cap was held together with 10 millimeter studs in a stock block configuration, which I think is pretty interesting considering what I know today and some of the things that we do to protect the bottom end from having any issues. So what we ended up with was working with a company which is the now defunct A1 Technologies. And what they had was a stud from a different application that kind of fit the bill. So the length was close, the thread diameters were right, so they were able to sell us these MP35N studs that were from a different project, and with a little bit of alteration to make the stud the right length and get the right thread engagement, I was able to use them in this block with really good success. I mean, if you think about it, this little stud here is holding 1400 horsepower together across this main girdle. And the one thing that I always hated about it was just how small the footprint was for the washer to be able to apply that clamp load. So I
was thinking about putting a bigger washer on there, but you're still really only going to encompass so much when you do that. So I decided to kind of think back a little old school and look at some of the stuff that, some of the old drag racers used to do back in the day. And that's where I kind of came up with nothing revolutionary, but decided to put a strap across the mains. So that's basically what you see here. So basically this strap is going to take the place of these two little washers. So if you think about it, instead of this nut applying the pressure just across that small little washer, you're now going to be able to spread that clamp load across this big strap, which is thick enough to be able to transfer that load pretty evenly across the main. Now, one thing that there was is this little step in the main here. So all I did was I took the girdle to the mill, I milled it flat so that the strap had something nice and flat to stick onto, and here we go. Voila. So now, when you tighten up the nuts, you're giving it something that can actually clamp onto, which in my mind should build a much stronger bottom end. So I know I'm going to run into a speed bump or a dead end here soon. Really, I'm looking to make about 1,700 horsepower to try and get this car where it needs to go. And I know that I don't believe that this package that you see sitting in front of you is going to be able to get there, but I want to get as close as we can. So if you look at how this is going to work, I think this is going to help out quite a bit. This will keep the studs from wanting to split apart when you start to apply all of that load. It applies that clamp load very evenly across the bridge of the main, and you can compare that to what we have here, and I think it's going to be a huge success. So a quick story about these straps is that I had gotten a hold of a company called Send Cut Send. Now, Send Cut Send is awesome. I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but they have it figured out. Basically, it's a website where you can upload your 2D drawing, or you can use their online parts designer. And for simple stuff, like I used here, you can go ahead and have that design made, and they'll laser cut or NC cut it out, water jet, out of a bunch of different materials. Thin plate and sheet. They have steels, aluminum, stainless steels, titanium, plastic, carbon fiber. I mean, you name it, their selection, I think, is growing pretty readily. So the cool thing is that I chose this 4130 material. It's 3/16 thick. And you can see that it is definitely going to give a lot more support than these tiny little, 3/4 inch diameter washers would ever provide. So this company, Send Cut Send, is amazing. This is a $4.60 piece that you see sitting here. So I had 10 of them made. So for under $50 shipped to my house, I had enough of these straps to be able to do 2 engine blocks, which are the 2 that you see here. So I paid for everything from Send Cut Send. None of this was given to me for free. So this is my honest opinion and my honest experience about working with this company. And I gotta say, their customer service is awesome. Basically what happened was I had designed up this part, I submitted the order, and the order got produced, and I got a shipping order. I got a tracking number. So as I was tracking the shipment, it seems like it stalled out in Tennessee. So a few days goes by, and then a few more days go by. And I get a hold of Send Cut Send, and I was like, hey, I think there's a problem. It's showing the FedEx number is still stuck in Tennessee, and I don't see any movement of it. So what Send Cut Send decided to do, one of their customer service guys said, don't worry about it. We'll produce another batch and send them out to you free of charge. You should see them in a few days. And just like that, this batch showed up, no questions asked, and it's been awesome. So I tell you, I'm going to be using them in the future for a few different things. So this is one of the small improvements that I'm going to be doing to this engine to try and make it so that we can have a little more structure to produce the horsepower that we're looking for. So the next episode, I just got the cranks back. I just had them sized and balanced. So I'd like to go over some of the features that we had going in with the rotating assembly and all of the crank train, and talk about some of the bearing clearances that we're running and what I'm changing there to try and help this thing live a little bit longer as well. So stay tuned, and I hope you guys enjoyed your time.